work. So it takes a lot to make all this happen, and we appreciate all the help. And if any of y'all want to be involved, I need election workers. I'm sure Hannah needs election workers. So hit me up before you leave, because I need to turn in those lists and get those slots filled in, and let's make all this the safest that we can be. It's not safe if one Democrat has to sit in that polling place with 3 Republicans. And so we can't let them work our slots. So that's what I might ask of you today, is that you help me get those slots filled. The other person I want to introduce is Ruben Ramirez.
Yeah, Ruben!
And Ruben is the district director for Midland. So meet Ruben today and have some conversations with him. Also, one of my favorite people in this room is right here. And he wants to be a senator for the great state of Texas. And that means to John Love.
Good afternoon. I am John Love. Thank you. I am John Love, and I am running for the United States Senate in 2024 to get rid of Ted Cruz. I have the distinct privilege of introducing the next governor of the state of Texas. But before I do, I want to let you know something. This is your state too. If you have been watching the ads lately on TV, you've seen Governor Abbott do nothing but promote fear. Fear, fear, fear. Why? Because he has no plans. He has no solutions. That's all that he can do. And I want everyone here to understand that this is your state too. And on Monday, we fight back. On Monday, we have an opportunity to restore women's rights. On Monday, we have an opportunity to, no matter what they do with the voting laws, we're still gonna vote. On Monday, we have the opportunity to make our schools safe. I want everybody in this room to say, this is my state too.
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 I don't care what the polls say. The polls don't go into that booth.
That's right.
I don't care what the numbers say. It's what the people say. It's what you say. And I want everybody in this room, I know you're here to support Beto, but I want you to take 2 or 3 people with you to the polls and make sure that we make the next governor of the state of Texas Beto O'Rourke.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and for welcoming us 3 days from the beginning of early voting, when these ballots are going to be cast in earnest. The fact that we've chosen to come together at this moment right here in Midland could not be any more important for every reason that John gave, that Kathy gave, that you have in your hearts right now that brought you out at this defining moment of truth. And it is not lost on me that this will probably be the last time that I show up here as a candidate over the course of this race, although I plan on coming back as your governor as soon as I can right after that. But, you know, everyone here has made this possible. Going back to the first time I met David Rosen here, who encouraged us to come to a part of this state that too many other Democrats have written off, frankly. And I know that there's lots that we can say about Republicans and Abbott and those in power who seek to disenfranchise the people who could decide the outcome of this election. And all that's true. And we should be mindful of that every single day going forward. But we should also understand that Democrats used to represent these communities. They used to show up for the people here in Midland and Odessa and the smaller communities that range around right where we sit and where I stand today. And we're getting back to that right now. And it is thanks to John and to Kathy and to Hannah and Joanna and everyone else here who has kept the faith through all these years. And not just the faith in our prayers, although that's important, right? But the faith in our actions, the way that we pray with our feet, knocking on the doors of those who need to hear these messages about how we want to bring them in and ensure that the next governor of the state of Texas, the next justice of the peace, the next county commissioner, the next U.S. senator, we all want to deliver for all of us. And we don't care, no me importa, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, who you pray to, how you love, what country you came from originally. All that matters now is that we're here in Texas and we have the chance to do something great together. Last night I was in Amarillo and we did an event just like this one there. Earlier in the day we've been in Wichita Falls. Before that we've been in Longview. Cynthia is trying to see how much a Toyota Tundra can do in a 48-hour period. So, 8 hours of driving a day, lots of phone calls and events and meetings and rallies in between. But we want to make sure that we show up for everyone, everywhere, write nobody off, and take no one for granted. And so as I'm driving down from Amarillo to see you today, I am driving through New Deal, Texas. And it made me think, how in the world did New Deal, Texas get that name? And so I used the internet, looked up the history of that town. It had another name before, but in 1938, because of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and members of Congress, who was then a congressman, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and others who represented this region in the highest positions of power and public trust, they brought this country through a very divided, very dangerous moment. You had American firsters who wanted to stand with the Nazis instead of with our allies and friends in Europe and the very values of this great democracy. You had millions who were struggling literally to put food in their mouth, to afford a roof over their head, to just survive in this land that had been distinguished by the plentifulness and the wealth and the richness that we had created together. You had a country that was wondering aloud whether our form of government, this democracy, which Abraham Lincoln had called the last best hope of earth, was going to come through for us at that moment of truth. And FDR and OBJ and those who live right here in Midland and Odessa and the communities around us in West Texas and the Panhandle, they said, we're going to come together and find a way through. And whether it was the Public Works Administration, whether it was Social Security, whether it was Medicare, whether it was all of these programs that connected people with the help that they needed at that moment of truth, we found a way, despite our differences, to get the job done. And one of those programs that I'm very mindful of, because I've heard about it so often from so many, was something that allowed towns and smaller communities that could never have afforded electricity to be able to be wired for light, so that their children could read their homework by electric light, just like the kids in Dallas or New York or Tokyo or London. The Rural Electrification Administration was not a handout from the federal government. It wasn't a freebie. It certainly wasn't socialism, a word that was used then to try to scare people about Democrats, the way that that word is used today to try to scare people about Democrats. What it said, as you all know, is if your community, if your town will form a cooperative, if you'll band together and bring the resources to the table, and we could give a damn whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we just want to know that you want to do the right thing, then we, the people of America and the people of Texas, will meet you halfway. And we'll make sure that though no electricity company could ever make a profit by wiring your town, we'll step up so that you're every bit as competitive as any other part of Texas or the United States of America. And I've been in meetings just like these, where there are those among us who are old enough to have been in grade school or middle school or high school when their towns finally got electricity. And they are still emotional about it. Literally will bring tears to their eyes. And they'll talk about what it was like to be in the first grade and to finally know that you counted for just as much as anyone else. And it had to be that feeling, that emotion, and that understanding that you were fully respected as an American, as a Texan, as a human being, that compelled the citizens of that community to name their town New Deal. Well, listen, I propose so many years and decades and maybe a totally different world away from that era that we approach one another in the same way. And we don't define ourselves by who we're against or who you're supposed to be afraid of or the folks who are coming to get us, but instead the great things that we should be able to do. For those of you who are educators, and I may not have many of you in this room because I'm well aware that it's 1 o'clock on Friday, it's a school day, and probably those folks are in school, but for the counselors, the librarians, the classroom teachers, for the retirees who gave literally the best years of their lives connecting with and teaching our kids and drawing forth a lifelong love of learning to make sure that there was nothing but nothing that could stop them over the course of that life. You are our heroes. You're doing the toughest job at one of the hardest times I can imagine asking you to deliver for those kids who just survived 2 years of pandemic, 2 years of learning loss, 2 years of some real trauma where in a state that lost 100,000 human beings due to COVID, they have lost their grandparents, their folks may have lost their jobs, their family may have lost their homes. You right now, those educators, are literally trying to keep those kids alive, on top of teaching them reading, writing, and arithmetic, and just being there for their social and emotional well-being. And there's no good reason that you should be so badly underpaid relative to teachers across this country. In fact, on average, the Texas teacher is underpaid by about $7,500 a year against her counterpart nationally. But that's just the average in Texas. Out here in West Texas, we'll see teachers down $10,000, $12,000, $16,000 a year, meaning they're working 2, sometimes 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. 3 jobs for the privilege of showing up this Friday morning and delivering for those kids in front of them after having taken tens of thousands of dollars on in student loan debt that many of them are still paying off, in addition to out of their own pocket, not just putting up the Halloween decorations and next week Thanksgiving and Christmas, but paying for that meal for that child on free and reduced breakfast and lunch who does not have a dinner to go home to, or a new set of clothes for the kid who shows up in the same dirty set of clothes every single day of the school year because his parents just don't have anything in the bank. You want to make sure that kid can hold his head high, learn with dignity right alongside his classmates, and so out of your own pocket, though you don't have enough to make ends meet in your own household, you're willing to be there for that kid. I think all of us, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, big city folks, rural, small town Texans can agree that those teachers deserve more. That in the 9th largest economy on the planet, that's how big Texas is, we have the wealth and the resources to pay these teachers enough so they don't have to work a second or a third job, to show them the respect when they retire by ensuring they have a cost of living adjustment every year going forward so they don't have to work well into their retirement and into their old age, by making sure that given that learning loss and that trauma these kids have gone through, that you don't lose valuable classroom time to a high-stakes, high-pressure, standardized test that in no way effectively measures the potential of that kid or the effort expended on her behalf. That's why when we win, we're going to cancel the STAR test in the state of Texas so that you can focus on the job that you're called to do in the first place. We're going to make public ed a priority once again in Texas, and no more threatening to take your public tax dollars out of your public classrooms and send them to private schools in the forms of vouchers. We're going to find out how to make sure that we get the best education possible for our kids right here in Texas. It is hard for me to find a Republican, the Abbott supporter even, who will take the other side of that argument. That's just a foundational, fundamental value that we can all agree on. Another one, Medicaid. Now, we are one of the last states in the union not to accept Medicaid expansion. And in just the raw numbers, this is what it means. $10 billion that you and I and other income taxpayers have sent up to D.C. is now being distributed to every other state almost in the union, except for Texas. If we took the deal on Medicaid expansion that's on the table right now, we would bring back that $10 billion to Texas every single year. That means so far we've lost $100 billion of our own money, not the stuff that grows on trees or that is printed in Washington, D.C., but the stuff that we literally have already sent up after we earned it by working so hard in Texas. But going forward, we can take yes for an answer. Not just bring that money in, not just create hundreds of thousands of jobs, including jobs for medical providers, nurses, doctors, behavioral health specialists, but we connect more people with care who today are going without. We're 51st in the nation in access to mental health care. That means our largest provider of mental health care services today is the county jail system. That means you and I pay $120 a night to keep someone locked up whose schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or clinical depression could be treated by a therapist at a clinic if we would just take yes for an answer. And the kicker is, if we did take yes, we could also bring down your property taxes because you're no longer on the hook for uncompensated indigent care at our county hospitals. This is something, again, that we have one person who really loves Medicaid expansion. You've been waiting to cheer, and I'm going to give you a chance.
We lost money because of that.
She's talking about losing money in these hospitals because we haven't expanded Medicaid. I'll tell you what else we lost. 16 rural hospitals over the last 8 years that Greg Abbott has been in office no longer exist. And I've been in those communities, and I've met the people who have told me what that means for them. Cynthia and I were knocking on doors in Bowie, Texas, in Montague County, one of those rural communities that lost their hospital because Greg Abbott wouldn't expand Medicaid. And we met an older gentleman who told us about his wife who had a stroke, who he could no longer take to the hospital that was just a couple of minutes away. They now had to drive, and I think she may have been medevaced out by a helicopter, maybe more than 100 miles away to get to the one place that she could get some care. Luckily, she survived. We met others who lost family members who did not. So tell me there's a more fundamental value than this one. And here's another kicker for you. We invented the program. Medicaid was first signed into law by Lyndon Baines Johnson, who had worked with FDR as a congressman, now as the President of the United States. He wanted to make sure that no one was too poor or too unlucky to be healthy enough or well enough to live to their full potential. I'll give you another one, and that's investment in our infrastructure in these communities. I mentioned the Rural Electrification Administration. We need that again today, but for internet. I'm going to rural communities right now, not too far from where we are here in Midland, where folks literally cannot get online. Try finishing your education, or finding a job, or with what you grow, getting it to markets if you cannot get online. If you're single and lonely, try finding a date if you can't use the internet. Almost impossible in these communities. 50% of rural Texans cannot reliably get online today in this great state. There is nothing but nothing that excuses that. And remember that first grader back in 1938 who finally got his town wired for light and can study by electric candlelight just like the kids in the big cities? Well, that kid is alive today in first grade in rural Texas, but can't get online like the kids in Midland or El Paso or Dallas. He is waiting on us to do the right thing. And here's the thing. That kid is probably right now represented by a Republican in the state house, by a Republican in the state senate, by a Republican in the United States Congress. But look, I'm not as partisan as one might think. I think those Republicans care just as much about their constituents as any Democrat might. And if as governor I bring them to the table and I say, listen, I'm going to help your community by partnering with them, ensuring that we invest the resources to extend that broadband internet, to fix your roads, to make sure that your water systems and wastewater systems work because there have been 20 or 30 years of deferred maintenance, you better believe we're going to have agreement right there. And we'll also be able to attract more and higher paying jobs to these communities. So think about that agenda right there. World-class schools, the ability to see a doctor, and ensuring that the best jobs in America are found right here in the state of Texas. That's what we are about in this campaign. And the contrast to what we are about is what we've had for 8 years. 8 years of failure, whether it's failure to keep the lights on or the heat running or the water flowing when the temperature plunged last February, killing 700 people, and resulting in all of us having $45 more per month to pay on our electricity bills, failure in inflation, most importantly, the $20 billion more that we're paying in property taxes. Right now, get this, the average Texan is paying more in taxes than the average Californian. Used to be the other way around. People would leave California to come to Texas. You might see it moving in the opposite direction unless we change course. In this state today, we lead the nation in the number of school shootings. It has been 21 weeks and counting since 19 children and 2 teachers lost their lives in Uvalde, and this state under this governor has done not a thing to make it any less likely that any other child in any other classroom meets the same fate as those 19 kids did on the 24th of May, 2022. In fact, gun violence today is the leading cause of death for children and teenagers. And then there's this, and it's what John and Kathy were just talking about, and that is our democracy. It's harder to vote in Texas than it is in any other state in the union. Harder to register and get your name on the rolls here than anywhere else in America. And to put a point to it, in our March primary elections, a 95-year-old World War II veteran, in other words, a guy who was willing to lose his life to fight fascism half a world away, to protect democracy right here at home, had his ballot by mail request rejected not once, but 3 times. That guy, more than any single one of us, has earned the right to vote, but could not cast a ballot in the very state that he protected with his very life. And I don't know if he's a Democrat or Republican, because it does not matter. We should just make sure that if you're a citizen and you're eligible, you are able to vote. So the answer to that is winning this election, fixing our democracy, making sure that we allow you to register to vote online, automatically, same day, that we replace gerrymandering where members of Congress choose their voters with citizen-led redistricting commissions, and make sure that you can take time off work or school to cast that ballot, replacing Confederate Heroes Day as a celebrated state holiday with Election Day as a celebrated state holiday. These are things that we can do to overcome these failures and get on that path of being there, delivering for every single one of us. And lastly, the only way this is going to happen is not through me and not through the Democratic Party. It's going to happen through all of us. Your friends, your family members, your neighbors, your classmates, your colleagues, they may or may not hear my message. They may not see the ad on TV or follow me on Twitter or Facebook or see the innovative dancing that I brought to TikTok. But they know you. And if you show up on their door, if you post a picture of us together today, even before you leave here, they are more likely than not to join you in supporting us in this campaign. And if, in your own words, from your own heart, you share with them what brought you out here today and what's going to bring you out to the polls on Monday, whatever it might be, they're going to say, you know what, I want to join this person. I trust this person. I believe in this person. I know this person. There are volunteers in yellow vests around the room today. They have open shifts on their clipboards to go knock on the doors of voters who are the very targets of suppression and intimidation. That majority that we have yet to hear from, whose votes have yet to be cast. I want to make sure that we reach out to them. And the very people drawn out of this democracy, we bring them in by showing up at their doors. We do that. And we're going to overcome these failures, and we're going to set us on a better path. We're going to fight to make sure that every woman makes her own decisions about her own body and her own future. We're going to guarantee that kids are prioritized over the interests of the NRA or the gun lobby or any politician. We're going to fix the grid in the state of Texas and lower the energy bills. And we're going to make sure that we treat one another with the dignity and respect that we are owed as Americans, as Texans, and as human beings. No longer defining ourselves by the differences, including a party affiliation, that might be between us. So thank you in advance for being willing to sign up with one of our volunteers in yellow. Thank you for taking another 5 or 10 minutes and coming by in a second and taking a picture with me and posting it online. And lastly, thank you for all the years in which you all have welcomed us to this community. You have made us feel at home in a part of Texas that we in El Paso, that were pretty close to you, still refer to as East Texas. You have not allowed yourselves to be defined by our differences, and that gives me more optimism and encouragement and hope than I ever could have hoped to have had. So thank you all so much, and we're going to hang out for a little bit to take some pictures. Grateful that you're here. Yes, I'm going to thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
If y'all would like to take a picture, we would love to stay, and you can ask a question when you're up here and take a picture. So come on over. We'll start the line on this side where Gabriel is. He's